Most of us thought about being a dad meant that we had to learn how to change diapers. We always talk about like how we're going to get zero sleep and somehow, some way keep the baby alive when we first become dads. But what if I told you that the harder part isn't baby care, it's wife care? And today's guest knows that truth firsthand because Mike Rothman co-founded Fatherly, the largest media company for dads, before he even became a dad himself. And now, after raising millions in venture capital, interviewing President Obama, The Rock, and shaping how the world sees fatherhood, Mike is now in the trenches of fatherhood himself. And what he is learning is probably going to surprise all of us. His story is about building culture and shifting platforms, leading with vision, and discovering what it really means to show up for his wife and kids. Mike, I got to tell you, man, I'm so excited to have you here. I've been following Fatherly for as long as I can remember. But the funny thing is I had no idea that you were one of the co-founders and you even started this before you even became a dad. That's why I kind of joked about like, well, he wasn't a dad when he started this, so maybe it was like more like he knew the wife part of it before the kid part of it.
Right. Both are equally hard and rewarding in their own way.
Yeah, for sure. I'm so curious, man. Like how did you even stumble upon this? Like not even a dad yet, and then you're gonna co-found this initiative. Like what was it? What was in you that wanted to do this?
A couple things. So I'd say commercially and professionally, I was running a company called Thrillist, which was like a men's magazine for young single people in, at this point, like 30 different metro areas around the country. And we started that back in 2005. And a funny thing happens when you're running a publication targeting young single people over the course of nearly 10 years is those people, the original cohorts for whom you created the product, are no longer as young and single anymore. And so we've watched our audience age into this new life stage. And that was maybe the first aha moment of like, hey, our audience is now, they're having kids. They have the same sensibility that they had before, albeit one with a little bit less time on their hands, and their disposable income that was going to bars and restaurants is now increasingly going into supporting their families. And then I've been a big brother in the Big Brothers Big Sisters program, starting when I was 18, and did that in Providence, Rhode Island for 4 years, and then again in New York. And in 2005, a buddy and I biked from New York to Los Angeles, uh, just the two of us, to raise money for Big Brothers Big Sisters, a cause that like really means a lot to me. So we were, on my personal side, with all the free time that I had as like a young single person, I spent a lot of time with fatherless kids and supporting families by providing mentorship. And then I got involved in an organization called Career Gear, which provides suits and clothing for men coming out of prison, poverty, substance abuse programs, to try to get them back involved in their families and their communities in a productive way that felt in many ways like a continuation of the work with Big Brothers Big Sisters. So serving families and serving dads really meant a lot to me, spiritually, personally, and then professionally. I was building a media company for young single people who are no longer as young and single anymore. And so I had these two, I'd say, concurrent trends in my life. And then the twain kind of came together when I met my co-founder, who is an actual expecting dad. And then we put together an editorial team of experienced experts, journalists who are also parents, who served as more of the consumer facing side of what we were building.
I have to ask this question. Wait, what was it in you that even at a younger age, like you wanted to do the Big Brother, Big Sister, you wanted to, or even like this company where you're helping people who've been in prison, get suits and get a fresh start. Like there's this tremendous, I think, service aspect about you. Like where does that come from?
I think in many ways it comes from my own dad, who, I would joke, isn't just like a good Samaritan, is a great Samaritan, where service is very core to how he shows up in the world. And so in many ways, like that's really the example that he set. And I always felt like to whom much is given, much is owed. And I felt like, hey, I was gifted this like really incredible, and I don't think I appreciated it at the time, but like stable family with like a very loving present father, and thought that I really wanted to kind of give that forward, pay it forward however I could. And it started being at, at 18, being like a college freshman and wanting to give back in some way into the local community and getting involved in Big Brothers Big Sisters. And uh it wasn't easy. These kids had really hard lives. Like I would like spend a lot of time at their houses, and you kind of see the environment in which these kids are being raised, very different than mine. And yeah, and so in many ways it became a calling. And for better or worse, I've always been drawn to professional pursuits that have a real sense of mission. And yeah, that informs like a lot of the work that I do, even today.
And is your dad still with us today?
He is
Yeah.
Russ Rothman. He started his career as a wolf biologist, and then somehow went from wolf biology to consumer electronics wholesale distribution, which is a tale as old as time. If I had a nickel for every person that made that career transition, I would have exactly one nickel. Uh, anyway, he gave up his career as a wolf biologist to raise a family in New Jersey. I think realized that living in the like hinterlands of northern Minnesota wasn't maybe the best place to raise a family for him and for my mom. And so he came back to New Jersey, where we had a bunch of family, and found meaningful, productive work. But unfortunately, there were not a lot of wild wolves in New Jersey. I mean, if you've ever been to like a nightclub in New Jersey, you're like, yes, there are a lot of wolves
There's a lot of wolf there.
of a different kind. Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
not the kind that like really appreciate close inspection. And my dad would also like study wolf scat, which is like wolf poop, to determine like, this one's in heat and this one is much more aggressive. And yeah, that doesn't fly in Jersey.
I've done a lot of podcast interviews, but I don't think wolf feces has ever come up in one of them. But this is a new one. But you mentioned that your dad was like a great Samaritan. So obviously, like he had probably exactly what he taught you from by example, which is like this personality and this I would say this pull to serve. What was it like for you and him? Like I would say more on a personal level growing up, as far as like you saw him do these things, but how did he interact with you that was, I would say, even special to you?
Yeah, that's right. This is probably the first time I've really reflected on that. Strangely, I think I can't recall like a single Danny Tanner like sitcom dad speech where he was like, "Son, this is the way that the world is." Or if he did, I'm sure he did. I just don't remember any of it. What I remember is all of the like kind of indirect stuff through osmosis of just the way, even today, he shows up in his community and doesn't make a fuss of it. I think if he made a fuss of it and called more attention to it, even among his family, it would resonate a lot less. And the one like speech or lecture that I recall that he gave was like the obligatory sex talk. And it was so awkward. Like we were visiting his old like campgrounds in northern Minnesota. I was like 11 years old or 12 years old. And he felt obligated because we had all this like shoulder to shoulder time, like driving from Minneapolis to Duluth, like just the two of us. That like, all right, I guess like my mom probably put him up to it, and he had to have this chat. And he starts talking about like how bees pollinate flowers, and he used terms like the stamen, and really tried to just like obscure what he was actually talking about with as much scientific language as possible. And it occurred to me like 20 minutes in, like, oh, we're having the sex talk. And he's using bees and like some kind of biological comparison. And of course, like I'm just as grossed out as if he, was a bit more explicit about it. And so learned nothing from that conversation. And that was really the only time he tried to like provide a direct lecture. But the point is that, yeah, and I think about this now of like the lessons that I want to impart on on my young son who's under 2 years old. Like, what can I possibly do? Yeah, I think especially with young boys and men, it's what you don't say, but it's how you show up that seems to resonate a lot more.
I would agree with you 100%, man. And by the way, I'm just laughing at the fact that like your dad had the sex talk with all kinds of like, scientific, but I mean, then again, he was studying wolves. So like, he had that background. So maybe he was thinking like, well, maybe this is the best way to explain this, which I think.
Yeah, you can hide a lot of like ickiness or emotions in like, complex 4-syllable words.
Right. Exactly. I want to fast forward to when you were doing Big Brothers Big Sisters, because I think that, I mean, I'm guessing you're working with kids who don't have a dad. Might not even have a mom as well. Maybe they're in the foster care system or adopted or whatever, but there's some sort of element missing there. But when you were doing that program, was that the biggest element missing, where there was no dad in the house?
Yeah, definitionally, that's what was missing.
Okay.
And most of the time that meant the dad was in jail or just unaccounted for in some way.
Wow. What did you notice? Like, what were some of the characteristics that you noticed? Kids that you would work with, kids that you would mentor that didn't have a dad in the house that was maybe different from maybe your own upbringing or just people in general who have dads in the house?
I think when I would work with kids who were under 12, like there was still like this real sweetness about them, where they're a bit wary of me coming in. Like here's like another, in most instances, like here's another white guy who is like obligated to come spend time with us. Like there were a lot of different social workers who came in and out of these houses. They made reference to it, like, oh, here's another social worker of a kind. And so in many ways, like they had a lot of people bopping in and out of like kind of these transitory presences or personalities. So there's like an inherent instability. And then when the kids became like, 12, 13 years old, they all tried to find comfort in, in groups or gangs. There was like consistently a very heavy allure towards gangs. And I felt like, I'd spend maybe 8 hours a month with these kids. And I remember thinking like, I'm going to save the world. I'm going to save these kids. I'm going to keep them, out of gangs. But like, obviously it's not that simple. Sometimes like I had a gang when I was 13. Like every 13-year-old is trying to find their place in a social pecking order. Uh, our little like, guy friend group would like get into fights with other friend groups. Like there weren't too many dissimilarities between what we were doing and what these kids were doing, but what these kids had access to had a bit more of an edge, because when we would get in fights, generally there was like a parent who would see it, who would break it up, or who would hear about it before it would happen, and there'd be some kind of intervention or like a talking to, and we would kind of get there'd be like some kind of corrective action. We would get set on like on a better path, and there wasn't that in these instances. And so these kids often made bad decisions. And the thing that actually precipitated this cross country bike ride was my little brother at the time got involved in a gang, burgled some house. Uh, this is like in uptown in New York, and it was a repeat offense, and so was sent to foster care. And his biological little brother was he got sent to juvenile detention, and his biological little brother was being threatened with foster care. And so the impetus for this ride was to raise money from the Big Brother Big Sister community to try to help my little avoid foster care and get set up with an adoptive family, and then provide him with a bunch of services and extracurriculars to try to keep him on the straight and narrow. So yeah, that's what we observed.
Quick pause here, gents. You just heard Mike talk about what happens when a dad is engaged in the house. Presence literally changes everything. And if you want that shift in your own house, man, the Dad Edge Alliance is where it's at. Inside the Alliance, you're going to get weekly tactical calls. You're going to get real accountability and a brotherhood that does not allow you to coast. You're going to learn the exact plays for a deeper connection with your wife, stronger leadership with your kids, and a daily system that will keep you consistent when life gets really loud and really busy. Like what I'm telling you here, guys, is we are not a forum. We are a team. The Alliance is a team, and you're going to be challenged, but you're also going to be encouraged, and your home will feel the difference. If you want a home that feels uncommon, if you want a home that feels steady and connected and built on purpose, step into the Dad Edge Alliance with us. Head on over to thedadedge.com/alliance, and I'll see you over there. Let me pull one big theme out of this, and that is, it sounds like if there is not a dad in the house, like this stable figure, right, the kids are going to gravitate to where they're going to be accepted. The kids will gravitate to where they have tribe or community or connection, right? Because I think one of the things that dads really, if we know how to do it, right, we know how to create connection. We know how to create structure. We know how to create stability, those types of things. We can also do the opposite, but when there is a dad in the house versus no dad in the house, you probably have you obviously have a higher chance of that than normal. But these kids, I think about this in a way of like, man, I don't know if you've ever heard the quote, like, if you don't raise your kids, the internet will.
Yes.
Right. Now,
Right.
especially now. And I almost think that the internet, in a way, I wouldn't say replaces gangs at all, because there's still going to be gangs. There's still going to be all that. There's still going to be that element out there. But I think what kids are really craving is connection. When we see kids diving into devices and social media and they want connection. It's the whole reason they join a gang, right? In your experience, what is the best way? Like, what is the antidote? Like, let's just say there's a dad in the house right now, right? And he wants to be the antidote of, any type of negative connection that might come his kid's way, like a gang or like a bad element or something, or maybe even too much like social media or too many digital friends, right? What can a dad do to disrupt that?
Well, I think there's only so much that like a dad can do. I think it's about like the dad can be the locus of an adult community that can also model good behavior, and that can create this like a level of accountability towards this broader group, away from this little tribe that's forming of 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds, and that can kind of provide a bit of context and community connectivity for the kid to say like, hey, this is kind of more than you, like your behavior kind of echoes beyond you. You have our last name, you're part of a community, you have responsibilities beyond yourself. So one, I think just providing that level of awareness, modeling behavior, reminding kids of consequences, showing kids, what these consequences look like, of like, hey, here's a person that I know in my world who made certain decisions at a young age that reverberated later in life. Here's why you don't want to do that. I think and still allowing the kid to make their own decisions, but providing a bit more context and accountability is helpful, because without that, it's easy for them to kind of go the path of least resistance, which is just finding immediate acceptance, regardless of what actually earns that acceptance, good behavior or otherwise.
I thank you for that answer, because I definitely agree with that. Like, what do you have a very interesting job, like doing what you do, right? Like you have eyes on things that, quite frankly, the rest of us just, we don't, right? When it comes to these interactions with dads and fatherhood statistics and all these different things. But let's talk to the guys right now that, let me give some context to this first. There's a lot of dads out there that are in the dad role that we just don't know how to be a dad. And I'm not saying that to dig on men. Like, I'm a dad of four, and every day I'm still trying to figure out how to be a dad. Even though I do this podcast and I write about this stuff, but I'm still trying to figure out how to be a dad. And but in all your research and everything you've done over at Fatherly, like what are the most powerful levers that a dad can have as it relates to steering his son or daughter in the right direction, creating connection in the home play, like making this experience of childhood um a positive one. And when I say positive, I don't necessarily mean that it's all sunshine, rainbows, and unicorns, and a kid's life is easy with no circumstances, but like to where a kid feels seen, heard, safe, they feel loved, they feel connected, they know that their dad is there. It's kind of like, how can we get every kid out there to talk about their dad the way you talk about your dad? And I'm talking to you, Mike.
Right. Well, I can only answer on behalf of myself because I think that's also something that I realized. I'm just naturally wary of, anyone who, proclaims to have like a panacea for everything and everyone. I am interested in attachment theory. Attachment theory would posit that the first 3 years are really foundational in establishing a secure attachment. And so being present, showing up for your kid, like being incredibly loving, um, encouraging. I think these are just like very basic things that are especially important for the first 3 years, before the kid might even have any like specific memory of this behavior. But like the kid will develop a sense of secure attachment. Um, this shows up in like, and again, there's a lot of debate about this too, like that because this also shows up in conversations about sleep training. Like you let them cry it out, or do you or do you just like come in the moment that they make a peep? And attachment theory has a perspective that um, other philosophies might disagree with. But and this is also, it's not just like the yeah, I don't like, I'm not the sole parent, and so this is also an active discussion with my wife, who's a partner in this process in many ways. For the first 3 years is kind of the one uh, leading the way because she spends the most time with our son. She's biologically a bit more naturally attuned to his needs than I am, even after she's done breastfeeding. Um, so yeah, that's 0 to 3, and then I think beyond that, I'm kind of figuring it out for myself. I've inhaled 35,000 articles, 500 videos, like dozens of books over the course of my work at Fatherly. And we raised this question at Fatherly, like, what's the point of all this information? Like at the end of the day, like, are we just going to behave, uh, the way that our own like kind of innate sensibility compels us? But I think no, I think like if you're just like leading with love, leading with compassion, um, the things that we want to foster in our kids, like resilience, like will happen. Like resilience doesn't happen because you're neglectful of your kid. Like, oh, I'm just gonna like let my kid figure it out. And they're going to build resilience. Like they can build resilience by having a secure attachment such that they can then venture out into the world. I think, uh, yeah, as I kind of say this out loud, I think I'm arriving at my own philosophy, which is, I think in order to develop a sense of confidence that allows one to venture boldly into the world, you need to have a secure foundation. And so everything that a dad can do to foster a secure foundation starting from year zero, you should navigate your behavior to that.
What do you think are the most important things for that secure foundation?
I think just being there. I think that's I think being there, and not just like physically being present. I think there's like a quality of attention that really matters. And so if you are going to spend time with your child, like it should be device free. You should like, they know when you're like the heat of your attention is on them. So I think we should make a distinction between time spent and presence. And so some people just might not like, even, with all the work obligations that I have, like it's hard to be both there and present all of the time. But I think if you have a choice between being there and not present, uh, don't show up unless you can actually be like really focused.
Yeah, because I think kids at any age, they know when you're half-assing it, right?
They know it. Yeah. Yeah. And so anyway, I think that's like anyone, it doesn't require money. It just requires, like, if you're going to show up in the times that you have that are feasible for your situation with work, with, with family, but when you show up, if you can just be fully present for them, they will feel it. And that probably means more than anything else that you can do. There's no like Danny magic, like Danny Tannerism or like special game that's going to get them to feel, uh, particularly connected and protected by you. Just be present and try to be a good human towards other humans while you're in their presence.
Yeah, it's kind of like this strong, steady, kind, safe, presence to be around, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that, man. I mean, if you, I joke around like we've got several groups and clients and that kind of thing, and we'll take guys through different workshops and different skills drills and that kind of thing, and one, we were at a retreat not too terribly long ago, and we were with 10 of our clients and the Dad Edge. We call it the Dad Edge Business Boardroom, which is for our business owners, and we take those guys for a retreat twice a year. And we were taking them through. It was all about. It wasn't about fatherhood. It was about marriage. So it was about like, hey, how are you going to? What are you going to do specifically? Show up for your wife, for your. And a few of the guys were like, I'm just going to be more present and intentional. And we joked with them. We're like, if one more guy says I'm going to be more present and intentional, I'm going to punch you in the head. Like, because those are words that we all, yeah, we all just like throw around, right? I throw them around from time to time too. Like, I just throw them around. But the real thing is what you said, which is like, well, how? It's the quality of the intention. It's how you show up. You show up device free. You give them 100% of your attention. Otherwise, they're the wiser. They know. Right. I mean, we're not fooling anybody if we're like on our phone or having a conversation. They don't feel important. They don't feel seen. But when we can show up, and I also love the fact that you're like, if you can't show up fully, then just don't. Like, wait till you can. Do it when you can, right? Versus like half-ass it, which I think a lot of us do. I was half-assing it yesterday. My 9-year-old was talking to me, and I was having a full-blown conversation as I'm replying to text messages to his brother. And he was just like, "Are you even listening to me?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "What did I just say?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I'm not listening to you." Like, and I put the phone down. I'm like, "Dude, I'm sorry. You're right." I was like, I was messaging your brother back. Let's talk. Right. And that's idiotic for me to think it would go well. Right. So I love the fact that you not only shared with us what to do when it comes to presence and intention, but how to do it. Um, what is father? I know fatherly is obviously geared towards fatherhood. What is Fatherly's position on, I guess, the overall dynamic of the entire family? So not just dads, but marriage too.
Yeah. I think it's almost equally focused on relationships. Our mission then and now is to help men raise great kids and lead more fulfilling adult lives. And really having a solid relationship through marriage or through some other means, I think is foundational to both. Happy wife, happy life, or whatever kind of cute aphorism you want to use. Like, yeah, it's all meaningful because it's a lot easier to see it in the men who don't have that. Like, it leaks into every other aspect of their life, and that's kind of the thing that you have to take care of first and foremost. That's like that's the chosen relationship. You're kind of God given this relationship with your child, but like you chose to be with your partner. And it's important to get that right. Because also in the same way that like your child knows if you're half on a device, your child also knows if there's like some vibrations in the room with your partner. And so it's really core to kind of take care of that first and foremost, so you can be not like, a unit like where there's no daylight in parenting between you, but it all goes back to the prior point of just like feeling secure. Like it, they will pick up, to use the language of the time, like they will pick up on the fact that the vibes are off if the vibes are off. And so that means just because it feels unsafe in some way. So, so anyway, I think fatherly, to the extent that we have a unifying philosophy, is like, yes, this is very important. We indicate that it's very important by like the sheer quantity of digital ink that we spill covering the topic of relationships. Not just with man and a partner, but man and himself, man with his parents, like all of these relationships matter because these are the relationships that surround the child.
I agree, man. We were just having this conversation in our community today, actually. We hosted a mastermind call. One of the guys on in the group is having some pretty bad marital issues and was basically asking us like, hey, is it possible for someone to stay in a marriage where there's no intimacy? We're just friends and we're co-parents. Like, is that like, I could be somewhat okay with it, not really okay with it for long term, but I could be okay with it for a while. That's his words, not mine. But is that a detriment? Like if we, cause I don't want to leave my kids behind. Right. And one of the things that we brought up was, well, your kids are going to know, like we don't give them enough credit for being able, and you talk about picking up on vibrations, right? And he's like, well, they're little right now, they're this age. And I'm like, and I'm using this age for his privacy, but, and I was like, yeah, but, and the other guys chimed in too. I was like, but they pick up on feelings. They pick up on vibes. They pick up on body language, and they can't sit down and explain to you like, hey, dad, like, I know that you and mom are not really going through a great time right now. I know that you guys aren't really connected right now because I can tell. They can't say that. They don't say that. But what they do is they feel it, and they usually internalize it. They don't say anything. And it's usually not until years later, like in their adulthood, they look back and they're like, oh, like, wait, what? Like, what was going on there? So, what are your thoughts on that, though? And just statistics that you've seen on all these papers, all these videos, men are really, really battling with that one. Do I stay in a marriage that doesn't serve me because I've got this great relationship with my kids and I don't want to leave my kids behind? Or, am I actually doing them some damage here by allowing them to see like me and my wife just settle for this really mediocre, and even it could be a toxic relationship if we're just friends and roommates.
Yeah, I there are many more people that are more qualified than I am to answer, who inform a lot of the content that we create. Uh, it seems like I think just having a degree of honesty as a couple and kind of negotiating where you are honestly and bravely of like, this is where we're at. This is the extent of our relationship. Can we be, can we be comfortable with that? Is there a world in which we live separate lives, but live down the block from each other, and form a family unit that way? Is that better for the family? Again, these are all very private decisions, but I think it starts with just aligning with your parent, your co-parent, your partner, on what your relationship needs, and ultimately like how that'll benefit kids. But just trying to sweep it under the rug is the recipe for some kind of damaging explosiveness later. I think we've all seen that pretty consistently in these situations.
Yeah, I've seen that too. It's like where the kids they kind of grow up and they just have a hard time with their own relationships, their own intimate relationships, and because we learn those things by what we catch about, it's what we call what you catch, right? It's what we call, not taught, right? Um, let me ask you this: as far as can we talk about like what something that we were talking about before we hit record, and that because you brought up a topic and I was like, man, there might be something there where the digital footprint of our kids and people putting a lot of information out there about their kids. Like that was, that seemed to be a concern. Are you okay to talk about that and just some of the risks out there with that?
Yeah, I think everyone needs to be aware that we leave so many digital breadcrumbs all over the internet. This podcast, as an example, will produce a transcript deliberately by you or by some other service that will get hoovered up by a large language model, and there will be, and there will be customers for that information, whether we know it or not. And whether it's like, hey, tell me about that time you're searching ChatGPT, like, tell me about that time like Larry and Mike Rothman talked about parenting, and it shows up. And maybe you don't want that information to be so easily accessed because of something that was shared. Or you're posting a photo of your kid, and that photo gets picked up and put into a database that eventually some, malevolent actor uses for some kind of financial scam. Anyway, all these things sound far-fetched, but this is the world in which we live. And there are a number of instances where very savvy actors, people in technology, people who work in financial services that I know have had their identity compromised because of these digital breadcrumbs. And I think we've all seen like the aggressiveness of like the robocalls or the text messages that we get now on a seemingly like daily basis. And these actors are only getting more sophisticated. And now with AI, there's like voice spoofing. So the fact that I've, 30 to 45 minutes of my voice out there allows a model to train on like the register of my voice, and it can be replicated, and they can use that to call my grandma and steal a password from her. So it all sounds, again, far-fetched and like I'm wearing a tinfoil hat, but I think about that a lot, and I think about the risks of being public. And that's why I prefer generally to lead a more private digital life, and I'm especially concerned about my child having digital privacy. And so this is going to sound like a plug, but one of the companies that I work with, I'm on the board of, called Tinybeans. It's a private social network for parents. It facilitates private sharing of photos and videos among like very specific family members in a way that's like incredibly privacy assured and secure. I'd known of the product for a long time, didn't really develop more of an emotional connection to it, or become a paid subscriber until I think our son was about 4 or 5 months old. And like it so much in the team that they've assembled that, I'm now on the board because I want to see this succeed more broadly.
How exactly does that work? Do like families, like, so if I wanted to share photos, digitally with my in-laws, like we would both be on that platform?
Yes. So create an account for them where they have their own account. Uh, people can share Instagram photos privately, but this is a bit more feature rich. Like there's a calendar function where you can map exactly when photos or videos were taken. It can send you like personalized emails with reminders of, what your kid might have been doing on a certain day. As your kids get older and they have, artwork or other like, other like things that you would otherwise like throw away at the time, you can like save all of that on the platform. Um, and so, yeah, it's a nice way to it's like a digital photo book with all of the security protocol that you would expect from an app today.
That is, how long you been a board member of that?
About a year.
About a year. That is really cool, man. Yeah, I'm seeing like I think one of the most scary things that I had ever seen, like as far as AI goes, it was probably about a year ago when AI was getting like really, really big, but it was these parents that went out for like a date night to a movie, and their daughter popped up on the movie preview. And I was like, "Hey, mom and dad, how are you? This is not really me. I'm AI generated." And it was actually like their kid. Like, and they were just like absolutely stunned. And they're like, you need to be more careful with putting photos of me online because they could get into the wrong hands of the wrong people. And then they could replicate me like they have just now. And then they went into all these different risks of like, they could steal my social security number. They could steal all of our financial information. They could even sell our house, based on like some of the things that we put online. I was just like literally like, I watched that and I was like, I felt like my hands were sweating. I was like, oh my
Yeah.
God, like that's just crazy, when you see stuff like that. But I kind of do wonder, like, is that the world that we're going to be living in with our kids and all this tech that we have, and we probably don't even fully understand it yet.
Yeah, I think it necessitates a more expansive view of what it means for like a man or a dad to protect his family. And I think increasingly it's like you're not just protecting your kids against like some jerk at the towel next to you like at the beach. Uh like it could be some like Malaysian spam farm that's trying to like spoof their identity. I mean, it's truly a global stage. And I think what people don't realize when they're on social media is that like this is it's a theater of like active information warfare with malevolent parties across the globe that are either out for financial gain or that are trying to manipulate your behavior for some kind of political, cultural, social imperialism. And so enjoy your time on social media, but just be aware that these things are out there. Uh, and the person that you're interacting with might be a bot, or your information might not be fully secure. So you need more than just two-factor authentication for signing into these different services.
It's terrifying, man. It's like a totally different world than what you and I grew up in.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
And yeah, like even like I have like maybe a flip phone, but I was already like a grown ass man at that point.
yeah, I remember like the flip phones and like even like I saw this other video too, like they were talking about like how our phones are always on and we're always being monitored. We can't, like, the old flip phones, you used to be able to like take the battery out, like take off the back, take the battery out, and you can't do that anymore, because
Right.
like I don't know, but well, let me ask you this just as we kind of approach the last segment of the show here, which is you know, what is the end goal? Like what is the big audacious goal for Fatherly? And I would even say and the other platform that you're on the board on, and I apologize, what was it again? Beans, what are
Oh, yeah, Tinybeans.
Tiny Beans, yeah. So can you give us what is the grand vision for Fatherly? What is the grand vision for Tiny Beans?
So the grand vision of Fatherly is to help men raise great kids and lead more fulfilling adult lives. And I think that's a very flexible mission based on what it means to be like what a fulfilling adult life actually means. Again, it can be very flexible depending on the person on the receiving end of that information. So whether it's first marriage, a second marriage, a partnership, going it alone, like we have various uh, bits of service and kind of expertise that can weigh in to help men make better decisions for themselves. Um, and then with Tiny Beans, it's really allowing families to capture these incredibly meaningful moments, these milestones, in a way that's safe, secure, and privacy first.
Very good, man. Well, we're going to need it, I think, as we enter into, as we're in it. I shouldn't say enter into it, but as we're in it, what is the best place for our listeners to follow you, to just engage in any way, shape, or form? Where do you want them to go?
I would check out, well, Dick Job, the Dispatch. I think there's a whole other conversation we could have about the mission for the Dispatch and why it's important that it exists and succeeds. And speaking of information, in a very hectic information ecosystem, the information that we provide is it's factual. We provide uh, healthy analysis, rigorous analysis of today's news, and through the lens of policy, politics, and culture. And going back to the conversation on modeling good behavior, we try to model productive debates to allow people who may not, come into a conversation agreeing with a certain point of view, but can engage in an earnest, productive debate with somebody else and come away with maybe not a changed mind, but a bit more of an expansive view of what they were talking about. So we try to do that on our platform. And so Dispatch, Tinybeans, and I don't really have much of a social media presence. If anything, I'm probably on LinkedIn, which is /MJ Rothman. That's who found me there.
Outstanding. Well, guys, not to worry. We're going to have all the links in the show notes for you. All you have to do is go to thedadedge.com/1383 for this show. Again, thedadedge.com/1383 for this show. Mike, thank you so much for coming on today. I love and respect everything you're doing. Thank you for co-founding this initiative before you were even a dad, fatherly. I think that's fascinating. But also this Tinybeans and what you're doing over at the Dispatch. Thank you for all your hard work and just thank you for your perspective of service and how you're living. So thank you so much, man.
No, thanks for having me, Larry. And what the work you guys are doing is super important. Dads need more community. This is a great place to find it.
Well, I really appreciate that, man. Thank you so much. Gents, like I said, head on over to thedadedge.com/1383 for the show. We'll have all the links in the show notes for you that were mentioned on today's show. Gentlemen, go out, continue to live legendary. Take care.